Hey there, it's Nick. I want to answer some of your questions. So, what I want you to do is open your iPhone, go to voice memos, and I want you to start with a question and say, "This is Nick from Athens, Georgia," and continue on and ask me a question about real estate or operations or debt or capital raising or anything you'd like. Keep it under a minute, be succinct and clear, and email it to me. Nick@sweatystartup.com. And I'm going to start taking questions and answering them here on the show. Number two, I guess I rarely stray away from real estate and small business, but I have some kids now, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, both boys, and now a baby girl that was born a month and a half ago. And one thing, many of you are parents. I'm a parent, and I'm taking it very seriously. One thing that I've noticed in life is that it's not necessarily about how talented you are, how smart you are, or how competent you are, or how intelligent you are. It's much more about how confident you are and how much guts you have when it comes to taking the big meeting or swinging for the fences, or just the ability to sell and the charisma that it takes and the confidence in oneself that it really takes to do well. Now, I have 2 boys, and I'm going to give you a piece of advice because I think it's awesome. Every night after we take a bath and brush our teeth and read a book, I tell my boys what I love about them. It sounds really silly. I just tell Timothy, say, "Hey, Timothy, I love how fast you are. I love how nice you are to your baby sister. I love how kind you are to your mom. I love how you sat at the table all the way through dinner." And I just compliment him and compliment him and compliment him. And at the end, I basically tell him how awesome he is and how he's incredible. And I love him so much. And I'm really proud of him. And it has become one of the favorite times for the kids. They love it. They beg me to do it. And they just smile and squeeze me so tightly before bed. I highly recommend you give that a shot. Now, I have another podcast. You may not know that. It's called The Sweaty Startup. This is the Nick Huber Show. This is about real estate. I've been running another podcast with over 250 episodes called The Sweaty Startup, launched in December of 2018. So we're coming up on 4 years. It's got over 1 million downloads. And it's all about small business and entrepreneurship. As you know, that's how I got my start. And so many people think about real estate as just a passive investment, when you hear me talk about it on this podcast all the time, that the operations are the key. Small business is really the key to success. Running it, management, hiring, firing, training, building processes, all the things that go along with, running a company are the keys to success in real estate. Real estate is nothing, no different than a lot of small businesses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cross-posting a couple times, episodes that I think are extremely important. I'm going to cross-post a few episodes here from The Sweaty Startup because, as you know, there's a lot of crossover. So this is an episode from several months ago, one of the most downloaded episodes on The Sweaty Startup, and I'm going to put it right here for you to listen. Enjoy. Obviously, I talk all the time about how business is about momentum. What you start doing on day one is going to look nothing like what you are still doing 10 years in, 20 years in, and 30 years in. I'm 30 years old, and I've been an entrepreneur for 9 years. And I started by trading my time for money, carrying boxes up spiral staircases. You hear it all the time from me. And now I am buying and building and developing millions of dollars worth of self-storage. And real estate is different than small business. We are excited to, at least I'm excited to not be involved in my small business anymore, because a service business, you have to be somewhere at a certain time. There's mistakes that can be made. There's risk. We operated the most logistically challenging small business that I can think of, really, with the student storage. And because we needed to be on site in box trucks with college kids driving these box trucks in 23 cities at the same time, and we could only be in one place. So we learned a ton about operations, about management, about hiring, about training, about firing. But now, as soon as we started making real money, we knew that we were going to find a real estate asset class. Self-storage is absolutely nothing like our pickup and delivery storage, but our brand name worked for it, and we decided to go for it. It gave us a little bit of credibility, I guess, with the bankers. But you may start a cleaning company. You may start a roofing company. You may start a contract. You may be a contractor. My advice to you would be to make real estate a part of your 5 and 10 year plan, because real estate is the opposite of stressful, risky. I mean, it's a different kind of risk because of all the leverage involved. Whereas my pickup and delivery storage business, we had no debt, no bankers. But real estate is nothing is ever an emergency unless a pipe bursts or an HVAC system shuts down or plumbers need to be called, and not much a real estate owner can do about that anyway. You need a contractor to do it. I love real estate, and I think it should be the end goal of your entrepreneur because of your entrepreneurial journey, because of its passive nature and because of the tax advantages, which we'll get into in just a second. But I've been thinking a lot about all the niche areas of real estate that people don't even realize exist. I mean, you guys think I'm in the self-storage business, but I'm in actually a very small subset of the self-storage business. There's 4 different types of self-storage. There's the Class A self-storage facility that's 7 stories tall and has all climate-controlled drive-up storage in New York City and DC and LA and Chicago. That's Class A self-storage facilities with full-time managers, totally different business model, retail sales. There's U-Haul truck rentals involved in some of these. What I do is I go nowhere near these major markets, except for we bought a very small property in the Pittsburgh area. But I go smaller. We buy smaller facilities. We buy them in rural areas. We built our first one in Ithaca, New York, which is a town of 30,000 people. And we operate them remotely. We have an operational advantage. Now, real estate is special because of the tax advantages, period. While if you earn a chunk of money, let's say you earn $500,000 in a year running a cleaning company, you're going to pay between 35 and 45% of that income in the form of taxes. If you run a real estate company, you get to take advantage of something called depreciation, which massively decreases the amount of taxes that you owe based on the cash flow that you receive. You also get to write off interest expense as a operational expense, even though that interest expense is basically paying for the 75% of the self-storage facility that the bank paid for, not what you paid for. Real estate works how you finance real estate generally is between 20 and 30% of the purchase price. Let's say you're buying a $1 million piece of property, a self-storage facility. Between 20 and 30% of that purchase price is what you need to put down in the form of cash to buy it. The bank finances that other 70 to 80% of the asset. But you as a real estate owner, you own the whole thing. And you get to write off that whole entire purchase price over time against your income from that facility. So let's say you buy a $1 million self-storage facility, which is what we do. That's right in our wheelhouse, about $1 million. Say it makes $80,000 a year in net operating income after interest expense. You're on the hook for about $50,000 a year in taxable profits. But you get to depreciate that $1 million over 29 or 39 years. And when you depreciate it against your income, it drastically decreases the amount of taxes that you pay. And there's actually something called bonus depreciation, which takes it a step further. And the year you put it in service, the year you buy it, you can sometimes write off 10, 15, 20, 30% of the purchase price as an expense in the first year. Now, remember, we put in $200,000 to $300,000 to buy the $1 million property. You can write off sometimes almost that entire amount as an expense the first year, but you only had $50,000 in taxable income. You get to write off $200,000. That's what's powerful about real estate. If you buy a couple properties every year, you can have a massively different tax profile than somebody who is making what's called active income as a small business owner or a W-2 worker. So that's why people like Donald Trump and a lot of big real estate professionals pay almost nothing in taxes. I do pay a lot of taxes because we have our service business as well, but our real estate portfolio pays very little taxes as compared to the net worth and equity that is being generated over long term. Now, secondly, it is just incredibly low stress. We're buying self-storage facilities where there is no emergency. We have a piece of property sitting there. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to go anywhere. We don't have any trucks on the road. We don't have any service technicians out that can make mistakes. We have customer service reps to answer phone and rent units and deal with minor problems. Let's say a latch doesn't work, or a unit has an issue with the door, or somebody needs to pay their bill. That's what our calls are. Whereas 5 years ago, we were getting calls from angry students and their parents because their pillows and sheets were in our box truck and they needed them to sleep that day. Or they had to go get on a flight and they were going to miss that flight if we didn't come and pick up their stuff right away. That's the difference. And in self-storage, we don't even have any toilets or plumbing or HVAC systems that can fail where we have in the middle of the night calls, right? We haven't gotten a late night service call in the 4 years that we've been in the self-storage business, if that tells you anything about how this all works. So let's talk about how we bridge all this together. Let's say you're going to start a service company. Maybe it's a cleaning company, maybe it's a contracting company. A lot of these small businesses that you can start are related to real estate. If you're a contractor who knows how to finish basements like this, or repair, or you're a roofer that knows how to repair roofs, or you're a plumber that knows how to fix plumbing, you can buy fixer-upper single-family, multifamily homes, and that can be a competitive advantage for you. Real estate can also, anyway, I'm going to finish that thought before I talk about the next one, but real estate can be a natural progression of your service business. You can start by power washing parking lots. Before you know it, you are repairing parking lots. Before you know it, you own strip centers that you were servicing as a service business. For me, it was student storage to self-storage. For a contractor, it might be fixing up a home to being an Airbnb real estate owner. And there's all kinds of small, fragmented, niche real estate circles. There's medical buildings. There's dental offices. Everybody thinks real estate is just single-family homes, multifamily homes. There's so much more to that. There's industrial, there's last-mile industrial, there's cemeteries, there's trailer parks, there's self-storage, there is cold storage, there's industrial warehouse space for last-mile delivery. There's all these little bitty different niche markets that exist out there that you can get into. And the more niche they are, just like service businesses, the more niche they are, the more unsexy they are. Unfortunately, a place like BiggerPockets, which I respect as a podcast, as a piece of as a resource for people who want to invest in real estate. Unfortunately, that has gotten everybody interested in buying, renting out houses and duplexes and fourplexes. So that makes it very competitive. If you're going to buy a duplex in Athens, Georgia, you're competing against 400 other people in town who buy duplexes because they're fans of BiggerPockets and they got 20 grand in the bank. But if you can be the only one who can operate self-storage in a small town in upstate New York or Pennsylvania, which is what I do. I just operate small mom and pop self-storage facilities in these small towns in this specific geographic region. You can have a huge competitive advantage. Now, this leads me into my last point. My last point is about the operations. Everybody thinks real estate is just real estate. Well, let me tell you what. I'm buying real estate, and our competitive advantage is that we are operating them remotely. To put this in perspective, we have basically these properties can make us more money than they can make other people because of our operational ability. We operate the real estate. We have an operations company that runs the self-storage facility. It's not just real estate. And what we do is we can actually operate it better. To put it in perspective, we have a 51,000 square foot self-storage facility in Ithaca. That's the one we built. We spend $3,000 a year in on-site labor to sweep the hallways, to remove trash, to do all the little things necessary to run a self-storage facility. But the competitor down the street, they also have 51,000 square feet, and they have a full-time manager sitting in that office from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. They spend $85,000 a year in on-site payroll compared to our $3,000 because we use technology to allow people to rent units online, so on and so forth. What does that mean? That means a property that makes me $100,000 a year maybe only makes a competitor $60,000 a year. So if the price is $1 million, that's a 6% return on the overall price for them and a 10% overall return on the that is a 10% return on the overall price for me. That means it's worth more to me than it is to other people. It's less risky for me. I have a competitive advantage. I can pay more. I can buy more. I can scale because of the operations. And real estate is an old man's game. There's a lot of people who don't like technology, who don't use software, who don't answer the phone, who don't understand it. They don't maybe necessarily lease it up as good as possible. So those are all things that can lead to somebody with the experience of a small business owner, somebody with the cash of a small business owner. Those two things, your small business that you're starting when you're 21, 22 in my case, or now in your case, we're talking 10 years from now, those things that you learned, the operational advantages that you learned by managing people, by using technology, by running a small business the right way, all the things that we talk about on this podcast, you tie that into the cash. You tie that into the cash that you make off of a small business. Maybe your small business spits off $100, $200, $300, $400, $500,000 a year. Next thing you know, you're sitting on $1 million. How easy is it to get into real estate then? Everybody always says, hey, I'm going to get into real estate. I want to get into real estate. And my first question to them is, do you have any money? How much money do you have? And they say, oh, I have $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. I want to go buy a single family home. No. Make some money first. You really wanted to get into real estate? Go make $500,000. That's how you get into real estate. That's how you can get into niche real estate. That's how you can get into commercial real estate instead of just residential real estate. And that's how you can find niche real estate operations. So my advice to anybody who wants to get into real estate is make some money first. And how do you make real money? Not a W-2 job, not your stock investment portfolio. You make real money through small business entrepreneurship. If you look at, I'm reading a book about Francis Greenberger, the guy who built New York City back up when it really collapsed in the 70s and 80s. If you've studied our American cities, New York City, LA, Chicago, these cities were totally in a depression in 1970s and early 1980s. Some of these real estate developers came in with the cash at that time and started investing in these cities. Francis Greenberger, the book is called Risk Game, if you're interested in reading it. Some of these entrepreneurs came in and did this stuff. Well, you look around at all of them. Francis Greenberger, he started a small publishing company. His dad owned a small publishing company. He grew that publishing company to where it was making him $1, $2, $3 million a year. And then he had the money to start doing real estate. None of these big moguls, unless they're either family money or small business entrepreneurs, can just easily waltz right in and start a real estate portfolio and get into real estate. So my advice to you is going to be to start a small business, make a lot of cash, and always have in the back of your mind what real estate play you might be going after. Go on Google, and in the show notes, I'll post a list of about 70 different niche real estate asset classes, from cold storage to pet crematories to cemeteries to small self-storage facilities. There's hundreds of opportunities out there, hundreds of them. So always be thinking about that. Make some money first and then get into real estate. So you're on the right track. If you're starting a small business, you're on the right track. But 15 years from now, you better own a real estate portfolio that can create passive income and generational wealth for your family. Small business and real estate they have a lot in common, but they don't have one major thing in common. A self-storage facility that generates $100,000 a year in profit, $100,000 a year, that thing's worth $1.5 million. A small business that generates $100,000 a year in profit is worth maybe $200,000, $500,000 max. So a small business is very profitable, but it's not going to create long-term, reliable, sustainable business that you can leverage, that you can put debt on, that you can tax depreciate. Real estate is something that is going to really hold its value, and it's going to be worth something if you ever want to sell it. So how you generate generational wealth. I'm talking about wealth that will change the trajectory of your family tree, your kids and their kids and their kids. It's build a real estate portfolio. It's not build a successful small business. Small business is the means to an end. It is not the end. Real estate is the end for me. So take that for what you think it's worth. And if you have any questions on this, get active on Twitter, because real estate Twitter is phenomenal. You have guys like Moses Kagan, Chris Powers, myself, and this small community of people on Twitter that is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly powerful. You can learn a ton from them about how taxes work, how depreciation works, how valuing self-storage facilities works, how leverage works. It's awesome. And if you're on Twitter, you can search me at Sweaty Startup. But as always, guys, thank you so much for listening and enjoy the week.
Juniper Square, the sponsor of our show, recently did a capital raising survey. And in this survey, they asked 142 senior executives at US-based commercial real estate firms a series of questions to understand the state of commercial real estate fundraising. It's an insanely valuable report with data on questions like, how much capital did you raise last year? How long did your last raise take? What type of investors are you raising the most from? And what strategies are working the best for you to find new investors? Download this report for free at junipersquareresearch.com. That's junipersquareresearch.com. Big thank you to Juniper Square for sponsoring the show.
I just wanted to let you know that we have a paid real estate community with over 500 members. Not many people know about this. It's on Facebook. It's an inside look into my business and many other business. It's skewed towards self-storage, but there's also a lot of other commercial real estate investors in the group. We're pinging ideas off of each other. It's just where I share a lot more intimate details about my business than what I share on Twitter or on this podcast. So if you're interested in this and you want to meet other people, there's been people invest in each other's deals on there. There's been people share deals that other people bought. It's a place where a lot of cool stuff is happening. If you're interested in this, visit sweatystartup.com/REC, as in real estate community. sweatystartup.com/REC. There's a free trial as well. You can check it out for a week for $1.